Hello. I wanted to spend a few minutes talking about beer-specific analytics. These would be dashboards you could use to see how your portfolio of beers relate to each other, and then to do a deep dive to really understand what's going on with a single beer. You'll be able to see what demand trends are, who's buying your beer, how you're selling it to them in either draft or cans. You'll be able to see the relationship between the revenue and the cost you make off of each beer and where the volume to it is going. Then finally, see the importance of each beer in terms of overall ranking for your brewery. The first one we'll focus on is related more to your flagship beers. When I say flagship, that would be beers you always have on draft or you always want to have available for wholesale. So we want to show how those relate to each other. Are the demand trends the same? Are they different? Or how do we sell them? Do we sell some more to wholesale, or do some go more to our draft in our tap room? We want to see what the volume is and how much money we make when we sell each barrel of beer. And ideally, what we can do is really understand these metrics and develop a good flagship beer strategy. So we're able to optimize all of our different beers that we make in order to get the most out of them. So here I have the dashboard of flagship comparison. You might notice if you've watched a few of the other videos that this one's a little bit differently oriented, where I set this one up to be able to print on an 8.5 by 11 if somebody wanted to post this up in their brewery, where people maybe didn't have easy access to the analytics system. First, let me get you oriented on what we're looking at. So this first chart up on top is a trend chart. The thicker line is what the sales have been each week for the past 15 months. And then the shaded area lines up more to this axis over here. And what that's showing is for each of our beers, how much of our total sales did they make up? As your eyes are scanning the chart, you'll notice that some of our beers are more seasonal than others, and they spike in the summertime. And then in the winter, we have some, like the pale, that start to take up more of our percent of our overall sales. Down here, we're going to look at a breakdown a little bit differently. First up is our total barrels that we sold for each of these different beers. Each of the columns is one of these beers. So we have total barrels, then we have sales dollars, and then we have margin. So those are the dollars of profit that we make as we sell each of these. And then we can sell a beer 4 different ways. We can do, in this light blue would be cans going to wholesale. Next up, we have this darker blue, which is kegs that are going to wholesale. And then in the tasting room, we have yellow is cans sold in the tasting room. And then this orange color is draft sold in the tasting room. So we can see the interaction of all of those different ways we can sell a beer, what the volume is, how much revenue we sell it for, and ultimately how much money we make off of it. If you look at this next one up on the right-hand side, now we're going to be doing a plot that shows the relationship of the sales dollars or revenue we make per barrel of beer sold and what the cost was to make that barrel of beer. So as you're getting used to looking at this, always think that we want everything to be as far up to this upper left as possible. What that means is we're making a lot of revenue for each barrel of beer we sell, but the cost to make it is really low. So we make a lot of profit on those. Where we don't want is more in this quadrant of the chart. This would be low sales dollars and high cost, meaning we're not making as much money. I'll come back up to this one in a minute as we start to look at some of the takeaways. And then down towards the bottom is all the individual metrics that make up the charts in the upper part of the dashboard. Sometimes I find that people can get a lot of takeaways from the different visuals, but also sometimes it's nice to see the real precise numbers down below. So that's what we're doing here. We're breaking it down into wholesale and tap room, and then are we selling it as a can or a keg, and then these are each of our flagship beers. And then we're going through the total number of barrels sold in this period. We're looking at the sales dollars per barrel of beer, what the cost per barrel was, margin dollars per barrel, This is total margin dollars that we made off of each beer, which is really just multiplying the margin per barrel by the total number of barrels. And then finally, we're getting a margin percent. So now that we know what we're looking at, let's find a few takeaways out of here. I think I already mentioned that one thing up here is that some of our beers are more seasonal than others. We see that the fruit beer and the hazy IPAs definitely peak in the summertime. So as we're getting prepared for this summer coming up, that's something we want to be cognizant of and make sure we have enough brewing capacity for those beers. I think something else that stands out as we start to work down through this chart is for our flagship pale. You'll see there's a lot of dark blue in their column. And what that's saying is we sell most volume of this as a wholesale keg. That's this dark blue bar. But you'll see that bar starts to shrink as we get down to the total dollars that we make off of that beer. And the reason why that is, if you go down to this chart and you see wholesale keg and pale ale, we sell a lot of barrels of it, 156. But we're only selling it for about $400 a barrel, making about $300 per barrel, or only 74% margin. You'll notice one takeaway I think on here would be that we really don't sell a whole lot of the pale ale as a tasting room draft. The orange bar is very small on here. If you look here, you'll see we only sold 2 barrels of it in this time period. I think one thing we can do as we're trying to determine our strategy for these is maybe we want to cut back a little bit on the wholesale kegs that we're selling for pale and save more of it in the tap room. What that would lead to is instead of making a 74% margin on each barrel sold, we would make a 94% margin. So we'd really make a lot more money each time we sold a barrel of it. And then going back to this sales versus cost relationship, I think this one's pretty interesting. First of all, in this upper left, we see a lot of orange, which means that's our tap room drafts. So that's a good sign. That means we're making quite a bit of money off of our tap room drafts, which probably isn't a big surprise to you. If we look at now our wholesale kegs, that's further down on the sales per barrel, same cost as our drafts. So this is the quadrant of all of our wholesale kegs. And then over here, it's grouped a little bit tighter. We see all of our different cans. We have in yellow cans going out of the tasting room, which shows we sell them for a little bit more than cans going out of the tap room. And then finally, if we wanted to, for example, look at, let's look at this pale ale. We can highlight the different ways that we sell it. So most of that is going into this wholesale keg like we saw, and just a little percent of that as tasting room drafts. And then we also sell some wholesale cans. And in this case, we don't sell any cans out of the tap room. All right, so that was our flagship comparison. I like that dashboard for a few reasons. And I guess one of which just has to do with the data. So we were able to take data out of both the point of sale system and the wholesale system and combine it together to really give us this comprehensive view of our flagship beers. We were able to see how each of them is trending over time, some of the metrics related to sales, margin, volume. We saw how each one relates to each other when it comes to margin, and found some areas that we could maybe look to improve, and then was able to get to some really precise statistics at the bottom, really to see how each beer stacked up against each other. So I hope that was an interesting look, and you can have some ideas about how that might be good for data coming out of your brewery. If you have any questions on this or would like to see your data in this dashboard that would be updated periodically, please contact me. My email is jeremy@centralcoast-analytics.com. And that email is jeremy@centralcoast-analytics.com. Thanks for your time. Have a great day.